Today's lesson is going to be built around the most fundamental aspect of this course, the elements and principles. Now, there will be a lot of vocabulary in this unit, but it is the same vocabulary we will be using for the entire year. So don't worry, while we're discussing a lot today, the goal is to just touch base. So even though we're covering a lot of ground, this course will be generally made of small, focused lessons based around just a few of these terms, and will provide in-depth understanding through studio practice. A study guide with these definitions is provided in the link below, so make sure you have it handy for the project portion of this unit in the next video. Now let's begin. As I said in the beginning, the elements and principles are the most fundamental aspects of art. In other words, they're the basics. They're often referred to as the building blocks of art, which I think is a fair comparison, so we're going to run with it and compare the art making process to the actual building process. Here's our school. This school, like any other, is made up of elements that we can easily identify. There are walls made from bricks, there's concrete, tile, glass windows, wood studs, sheetrock, paint, etc. These materials then would be the building blocks of a building. Now let's try identifying the elements of a house. Let's see, walls made from bricks, concrete, tile, glass windows, wood studs, sheetrock, paint, etc. Whether it's a school, a house, a gas station, a restaurant, or any building you can think of, they will all be made of pretty much the same stuff, but the stuff is arranged differently. The elements and principles function similarly, which brings us to our first vocabulary word. So composition is the arrangement of visual elements in a work of art. So just like constructing a building, making a piece of art also involves arranging elements. Let's look at Leonardo da Vinci's Mona Lisa. This piece uses space created by color. There are lines and shapes creating form. There's value, meaning that there are lighter and darker versions of color. These are examples of the elements of art used to create this piece. Let's compare that to this painting by Jackson Pollock titled Blue Poles. I don't think anyone would argue that these are vastly different pieces of artwork. However, just like our comparison of schools to various other buildings, our goal here is to identify and ultimately analyze the building blocks of these art pieces. Let's focus on the elements I mentioned earlier, starting with space. We will elaborate on this later, but for now, space can be loosely defined here as the illusion of depth. The Mona Lisa's use of space is obvious. We recognize that she is closer to us than the mountains because she is larger than the mountains. Also, her image is in front of them. So Da Vinci has successfully created the illusion of depth by placing objects in such a way that we can imagine a three-dimensional environment. How about Pollock's piece? Does this piece use space? If you answered yes, you're correct. In the same way Da Vinci placed the Mona Lisa in front of a mountain range, Jackson Pollock has created the illusion of depth by overlapping lines and shapes. Still not seeing it? Well, what if we take it away from the Mona Lisa and instead compare it to this photo by Angela Cameron? We can easily see that some of these branches are farther away and others are closer because they are overlapping. And just like these overlapping branches create depth, so do the overlapping strokes in Jackson Pollock's painting. Let's go back to our original comparison. Now we know that both of these pieces have space, and we also know that the Mona Lisa has color, line, shape, form, and value as well. But does Pollock's piece share those same elements? Absolutely. So if all of the elements in these two pieces appear to be the same, then what makes them different? For this, let's revisit our building analogy. Now, we know that if we want to construct a building, we would need building elements such as bricks, wood, and cement. We also know that we can make different types of buildings depending on how we arrange those elements. Similarly, if we want to make a piece of visual art, we know we would need to use the elements such as line, shape, and color to create it. But how do we use these elements effectively to make original art? This brings us to the principles of design. The principles of design are the way we arrange the elements of art, and it is the difference in their arrangement that accounts for the differences in these compositions. For example, Da Vinci uses lines in the Mona Lisa for sure, but his lines are used mainly to outline his forms, like the Mona Lisa herself or the mountains in the background. But his use of line is very, very subtle. If we remove the other elements, you can get a better understanding of how he uses line. Jackson Pollock, on the other hand, uses lines very boldly in his work. They represent the most distinguishable element in most of his art. He wants the paint to be thick, and he wants his piece to look abstract. So while Da Vinci's use of line creates form, Pollock's use of line focuses on movement. That's the same element of art used in very different ways, giving very different results. And these same elements and principles can be used to describe visual artworks across all disciplines of art making. From comic book art to landscape paintings, from abstract work to photography. The elements and principles are what artists use to create and viewers use to identify thoughtful composition.